Alright, hello friends, and welcome to another reading vlog on my channel. So I originally wasn't going to do a reading vlog for this book. I was kind of just feeling like reading it all by myself and not vlogging about it. But I just got to something horrific in the book. And now I have to share it with you guys. So let's go back a little bit to the beginning because I'm currently on page 60, so we have 60 pages worth of content to tell you about. Also, I should probably say this book, just in case you can't read, is House of Sky and Breath, the second book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. And I have a feeling, just from my current emotions, that this is going to be a spoiler-filled reading vlog. So if you want to know all the ins and outs of this book, continue watching. But if you're like, no, I don't want you to talk about every single little detail of this book ever, maybe not the video for you. So we start this book in a point of view of a character that we don't know. It's like a new character being introduced as she helps her younger brother and then a few other people that I don't think really matter. They're just there to be bodies. Escape a prison. It was feeling, if you've ever read Throne of Glass, very Throne of Glass Selena-esque, but the character dies at the end of that scene, so it's like, okay, bye, I guess. What an interesting... I still don't know how it fits into the rest of the story here, why we needed to see that, but I assume it's going to be something big that pops up throughout this. Then we are getting little bits and pieces of what Bryce and Hunt's life is like, mostly Bryce, let's be honest, after the events of the first book, because it was world-changing, and the way that, like, Bryce is kind of popular now because she saved the world. Everybody knows who she is. Everybody's always, like, thanking her. And not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but just kind of, she wants to live her own life. She doesn't want to be in the spotlight. And so it's a little unfortunate for her. I'm currently in chapter 4, where they are at a house party being held by Rune and all of his friends, roommates, whatever you want to call them. And this new character pops up. This Fae guy who introduces himself. He says his name is Cormac. And then says that, like, he's now engaged to Bryce. But then says the absolutely awful line, and I need to read this to you word for word because it's the whole reason why I picked up the camera. He says, "You're an unwed Fae female. That means you belong to your male kin until they decide to pass you to another. The decision has been made." I'm gonna beat up every single Fae character in this series, because what the fuck do you mean? Yikes. Like, that's really how we're gonna start the book this time? Oof. So, I'm gonna hop into it a little bit more because I haven't read too much of it. I've only read like 60 pages, but this book is going to be a roller coaster, I feel like. I have mixed feelings about Ethan, or Ethan, but I think Ethan sounds better in this book because, like, on one hand, I like him. I like the fact that he was kind of a bad guy, but ended up deciding to, like, pretty much throw his life away, everything that he's ever known, in order to be on Bryce's side. But on the other hand, I feel like he's just a Connor 2.0, or just like a younger version of Connor, somebody who is in Connor's shadow, that I kind of feel bad because I don't think I'm ever going to be able to associate him with his own character. And that might be the intention with his character. You know, that might be like something that, as Sarah J. Maas was writing this book, she's like, everybody's always going to think of Ethan as just basically a younger Connor. Because I said this before when I was reading the first book, I really liked Connor. I kind of wish that he was ending up being the love interest, even though like I knew he was going to die, just solely because that's the way that Sarah J. Maas books work, right? You always have the one character who we learn a little bit of who dies, or like a fake love interest who's not the actual love interest, and then you meet like the actual love interest, right? But I just feel kind of sad every single time we get into a section in this book where we're talking about Ethan, because he deserves to be his own character, and I don't think that I would ever think of him as anything other than a Connor 2.0. One thing as well that I think that I said when I read House of Earth and Blood, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'll say it again here, and also this is a whole new video, so hi, is that I felt like House in Earth and Blood was really good as a contained story. I know that there are 3 books in the series so far, but after reading House of Earth and Blood, I was like, I don't know where this story is going to go on from here if we are still going to be focusing on Bryce and Hunt, because it was such a contained, singular story that I could only imagine the rest of the series focusing on other main characters, you know, and just kind of keeping them as background characters. So it was really surprising opening this up, even so much as looking at the description, the summary, because it talks about Bryce and Hunt, and it's like, I thought their story was over, you know? I wasn't expecting them to be major characters throughout the entire series. But I just got another little detail in this story that I'm so surprised about, because I'm at the part where Tharian is looking into emails from, I think her name is Sophie, but I want to double check before I say it. Yeah, Sophie, who is the girl at the very beginning who had broken into what was basically like a prison to get her brother out, and then died at the bottom of the ocean, supposedly. They're questioning whether or not she's alive, and I'm like, I don't think so, but you know, okay. Anyway, the point is, he finds emails sent to Sophie from like people working together that are from Danica, who I definitely wasn't expecting to have a big character and a big significance to the plot of this book, considering the fact that she died in the first book. And then also, like, the first book was so focused on her and all of her secrets that I just didn't expect her to have more secrets. And I'm really surprised, even though I'm kind of like, maybe I shouldn't be, because she had so many secrets, that of course she's going to be like the interlocking mechanism that pulls this plot together with the previous book. Like, of course Danica's going to be in this book. But it's also like, I thought that once we finished that book and she, I don't know what word I want to say there, like disappeared, you know, that we would never hear about her ever again. And it'd be like, that's kind of sad, but you know. Apparently not. I love urban fantasies, and I think that this is actually something that Sarah J. Maas does really well in her writing, is that I just got to the scene where Ethan is playing around with his sword, and he stands on top of the dining room table, and it breaks, and they find out that there were secret papers, like, inside the table. No one would ever think that would happen, and yet it's like the answer to their questions. And like I said, that's just something that I always really like about urban fantasies, especially when we're focused on like a mystery aspect is you think there's a small detail, something that you wouldn't think twice about, and then it ends up being like a really big moment that's going to further the investigation. Okay, this is the funniest way I have ever read a spoiler, and it's confused me in my life, and I need to share. Also, my tripod's over here, but it's stuck underneath the legs of the chair, and I'm afraid that if I bring the chair down in order to get it out, I'll wake up my dog, and I don't want to do that. So I guess I just have to hold my camera now. So I had read a spoiler. I know who Agent Daybright is. Let's say that. Like, I know who that is behind the scenes. I just read this line that says, Sophie was in contact with our most vital spy in the rebellion, Agent Daybright. And now I'm like, I was convinced, like 100%, Sophie's dead, even though they could not find her body at the bottom of the sea where she was supposed to be. Like, she's dead. But now I'm like, well, maybe there's more to this than there should be, because her body is missing. She was in contact with Agent Daybright. I'm like rethinking that entire scene where she dies over again and being like, what really went on here? I'm so confused. Update. I just got to this point where Rune asks Daybright, do you know anything about Sophie? And Daybright responds, I assume she was dead. So now I don't know what to think. I already didn't know what to think because I was like, oh, I think she's dead. But then also, like, if Daybright is an agent, which I didn't even know that, which is a weird thing to say because, like, I should have known that. I don't know why. I just knew the code name. If Daybright is an agent and on the same side as Sophie, the girl who was killed, then Sophie might not have been killed. But then asking Daybright, do you know anything about Sophie? And Daybright says, I assume she was killed. So I guess she was? I'm so confused. You know what? I'm not going to think about this anymore. I'm just going to read the book and figure it out once I get to the point where it's like yes or no. We're not going to put thoughts into this book now. We're going to let this book think for me. So I read 300 pages today, and now I have a headache. Which I didn't even know was possible from reading, but every single time that I pick up this book and I just read like 2 more pages, I aggravate the headache. But when I'm not looking at this book, like I could be on my phone, I could have, lights on or whatever, be looking at a screen, no problem. Looking at the pages of this book, for some reason, I get maybe halfway through a page. And then I'm like, okay, my head hurts, but I just started this scene, so let me, work through it until I can get to a scene change or something. Just let me, read this moment. So, 300 pages is also, kind of weak. I feel like I could read more, but I have a headache. It's been literal hours since I developed this headache, and I keep, torturing myself a little bit by the headache going away, me picking up the book again, reading a couple of pages, and then feeling like I'm going to throw up. It's definitely the book, but I have never known paper to give me a headache. Words on paper. Wild. So I'm at the part right now in the book where the Hind finds Rune and Ethan out at the bar and they're all playing poker because, you know, they're besties. And that's what you do. You're playing poker with the besties out at the bar. And she's, I guess, kind of intimidating them or just like talking shit to them. And I can't help but think in this scene that my favorite character of the previous book, I'll say, was Lahaba. I really liked her. She died. I can't help but notice there's been multiple times now in this book where I've been like, man, I really like Ethan. The scene where he's in the other room and Bryce and Hunt are like doing things, and he's like yelling his own commentary. Good scene. The scene where the Hind is like kind of making fun of him for his crush on Bryce. Like, I really like him. Can't help but notice my favorite character of the previous book died. I have a favorite character in this book. Really hope he doesn't die. One thing that I am currently wondering, I just got to the part, just for reference, where they met up with the astronomer and like the three mystics, all that, and had that little adventure. And I am wondering, I think it'd be really cool, but I don't know whether or not Sarah J. Maas would actually do something like this. If she is going to bring back Connor in the pack, minus Danica, because she's like, she's gone. But whether or not there is eventually going to be something either in this book or the next book, or is there going to be a fourth book in this series, I have no idea what goes on in the third book. And that's kind of crazy to me because so far in the series I have known a big spoiler from each book. The first book in the series, I knew that Danica was going to die. The second book, well, also like the description says, it doesn't exactly say that like Danica's going to die, but it kind of like hints towards it. The second book, this book, the one I'm reading right now, yes, I know the ending and what all happens with that. I know nothing about the third book, so is that something that's going to happen in this book? Is that something that's going to happen in the next book? Is that something that's going to happen at all? I think it'd be really cool. But also, I can kind of understand if she wouldn't do that. But also, like, y'all know how much I like Connor. I want him back. I will say, 43 chapters of the way through this, page 467, I think, so like a little more than halfway. I'm not liking this book as much as I liked the first book in the series. I think that this one is a little bit more boring, and that there's just not as much going on. The first one felt like a really good urban fantasy mystery, whereas this one, it's like, I know the plot is we are trying to find this girl and her younger brother, but we're not seeming to like really work on that as much as we should be. It's more of like, oh, okay, now we're gonna go over here and do this, and then we're gonna go over there and do that, but I feel like it's not as cohesive, I guess, and I'm not getting into this story the same way that I was really into the first book in this series. One, you know, I'm on page 460 something out of 800, so you might as well finish it. You're more than halfway through the book. And secondly, I am interested in seeing what happens in the next book. I'm already kind of debating whether or not I want to take a little bit of a break before I read the next book, because like I read House of Earth and Blood and this one back to back. So, there's not any waiting in between the books. It's just like one right after the other. I already feel like I want to take a little bit more of a break before I get into the next one, because I'm getting a little bit tired of this universe, this story. But I just wanted to come on here and say basically that this one's a little bit more slower, I feel like, a little bit more boring, and I'm not liking it as much as I did the first book in the series. My mood with this book has dropped so significantly that at this point I'm just reading it and like I don't care about anything that's happened. I'm just like, yeah, sure, why not? I'm at the part right now, I'm about halfway through it, where Bryce reveals that she just kind of knows where Emil has been. Not this entire time, but that he's just chilling. He's just sitting there. And not only that, but the whole thing about, like, him having Thunderbird powers and how, like, that's a lot. He's just a kid. He's just some human kid that has absolutely nothing to do with anything. And it's just like, yeah, sure. Why not? It's like I'm still reading the book because I'm 6/8, 3/4 of the way through. So I might as well finish it. But it's like I'm so just kind of tired of this story. I don't care about this story in particular, trying to find Sophie and Emil. The first book was really good and I really liked it, and then this one's just kind of like, okay, I'm kind of scared about the third book in the series now. But like I said, I'll probably take a little bit of a break before I read it, because I am interested in seeing what's going to happen next, especially with what happens at the end of this book. But it's just like, this one is definitely not my cup of tea, not my favorite thing I've ever read. If I had to rate it right now, it would be probably around 2 stars. So, not the biggest fan, but I'll finish it. I'm at the scene where they are going to a ball now. I'm so excited to be like 170, 150 now, I think. Not quite. 140 pages away from the ending. But I'm in the scene at the ball where Bryce announces to everybody that she and Hunt are mates and yada yada whatever. There is this line that really like stood out to me, like, oh, okay, in that, we have been hearing little bits and pieces all throughout this that according to Fae law, women don't have any rights and that they are owned by their fathers, or if like they're married to somebody, then their husbands. And so with Bryce announcing to the world that she and Hunt are mates, there's this line that says, according to Fae law, Bryce was now Hunt's property. And that just really stood out to me because Hunt in the previous book was property. And now, even though, like, it's not real, and I don't think that he would ever, lay claim over her in that way, still just to kind of be like, how everything has changed, that now, not only is he free, but according to Fae law, he has property. I really like the way that Sarah J. Maas has flipped that, even though, like, kind of gross, but just, the way that it's just so different from how we started this series. I just really like the, connection, I guess. I'm actually really surprised that Day didn't know, apparently, who Rune was, because it says in the scene where, like, not the scene where she learns, but like the scene afterwards where they're talking about it. She says, "I saw you," and then it says like she was still processing it. So like she didn't know who he was, and I don't know why that surprises me so much. I just kind of figured that she was more knowledgeable than she actually is. I think mostly it's because she is sort of an informant throughout this book that I feel like she should know more than she does. Like me trying to figure out throughout pretty much this entire story whether or not she knew that Sophie was dead. For some reason, I keep wanting to call Sophie Pippa. Those two are the same character in my mind, apparently. Whether she knew that Sophie was dead. Because, like, on one hand, she was there. But on the other hand, she's, like, acting as though she doesn't know. And, like I said, I think, you know, a lot of that also plays into this, where I just think that she knows more than she apparently does. But the point to all this is I was surprised to find that apparently she did not know that Rune was Rune. I thought she did. I'm wondering if I would be too dramatic if I DNF'd this book with 120 pages left until the end. Because honestly, I'm sitting here, I've been reading this for hours, right? And I'm like, I honestly don't care. And the worst thing is, too, I was like, I want to look up reviews of the next book. Because I already know that the only reason why I am holding out in this book is to read the next book. Because I want to know what happens with the whole, like, Bryce finding herself in the world of ACOTAR. I haven't been talking about that this entire series, just that I know about that. But we're going to talk about it now. Because, like, I really want to know just what's going to happen, you know? So I was looking up reviews of the next book. Not, like, I was staying away from spoilers for the most part, but just kind of the general vibes. I want to know what the story's like. And, apparently, like, it's not that great. I saw a few, like, 5-star ratings that's like, oh my god, this is my favorite book of all time. But I was reading through the, like, 1-star reviews and being like, okay, so the things that I care about in the next book don't really matter all that much. I mean, great that apparently Nesta's a big thing, because she is my favorite ACOTAR character, so, like, congrats. But reading through, like, some of the little vague details I got for the next book in this series, I was like, I don't think that I actually want to read that. And now I'm looking at this book, like, the only reason why I'm sticking through with this book is because I want to know what happens in the next book. But if I don't want to read the next book, why am I reading this? So should I do like a summary, end out this video sort of thing? Should I DNF it? 120 pages from the end? I kind of think that I should. So general thoughts. Like I said, I feel like the plot to this, we just honestly don't care. Like, Sophie and Emile in general, they're not major characters. They have nothing to do with the plot. Even so much as, like, finding out that Emile doesn't have any powers. It's like, okay, so what is he here for? Like, he's, on one hand, okay, he's just a kid, right? But on the other hand, like, he's just a kid. Like, what do we care about him? This just feels like we're dragging on for 800 pages for no reason. Those are my whole thoughts. The mystery of this, the whole plot is not interesting. It feels like we're just setting up for the third book. But then it also sounds like the third book is just setting up for what would be like the fourth book or the fifth ACOTAR book. I don't know what Sarah J. Maas's plans are for the two series intertwined. I think my full thoughts on this book can be summed up with a single, I don't care. You know, there were some good moments. You know, we talked about how I like Ethan. I was intrigued by the whole, like, that's another thing we haven't talked about, is like who Day actually is. I don't think I've ever said that. I just keep referring to her as Day. I was intrigued by the whole Rune and Day thing. And I haven't even gotten to the point where he figures out who she is. But I was like skimming through to be like, oh, what's that going to be like? And from what I can see, they don't really have a conversation about that. Because like they're kind of like, he learns. And then they're kind of in the middle of something. So it's just like, okay, well, bye. I guess we'll talk about that later, but then they never do because we have so much other things to talk about with the whole Bryce going to the world of Akatar. That like, okay, but we can't focus on that right now. But other than those two things, it's like, I don't care about any of the rest of it. I feel so rambly right now. Yeah, I really was not expecting to DNF this book. Like, going into it, I was like, ooh, I'm excited to see what this book brings so that I can set myself up for the next book. But I think I'm DNFing this series. So, what a wrench in my plans. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed me learning that I don't like the book and my plans falling to ruin. And I will see you next time when I pick up a different book and hopefully like it.